Have you ever noticed something strange about retirement conversations? They almost always start with the wrong question. People ask, "How much do I need?" But that question quietly leads a lot of good planners in the wrong direction. Because the real question isn't how big your nest egg looks on a statement. It's what quietly reaches into your life every month and pulls money out. That's the part that catches people off guard. Not because they're careless, but because some costs don't look dangerous until they arrive. Some things in life are heavy but invisible. Like carrying a backpack all day, you get used to it, but it never really goes away. That's what hidden retirement expenses feel like. They don't crash through the front door. They settle on your shoulders slowly. And here's the hard part. Good planners are often the ones most shocked by this. Because if you've saved, budgeted, delayed things, and tried to be responsible, you expect retirement to feel clearer than it sometimes does. Fair warning, once you subscribe, you'll get videos like this delivered right to you. Still interested? Good, keep watching. Because if you've ever worried that you did all the right things and still missed something, this video is for you. Let me tell you about Michael and David. Michael is 70, a retired mail carrier living in a paid-off brick house outside Columbus. He has about $216,000 saved, a modest pension, and a Social Security check he waited to grow. On paper, a lot of people would look at him and think, not enough. David is 65, a retired operations manager living in a newer condo near Charlotte. He has about $914,000 in retirement accounts, no pension, and a much smaller Social Security benefit because he claimed early at 62. He looks like the success story. Nice place, nice balance, nice spreadsheet. But Michael sleeps well. David checks markets before breakfast. Michael knows what's coming in each month. David knows what his accounts were worth yesterday, and that's not the same thing. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. That's not a cute line. It's real. A lot of retirees are not actually looking for more money. They're looking for steadiness, clarity, and a plan that doesn't make them feel hunted. I want to know, have you ever felt like you were doing everything right but still felt behind? You are not alone. That feeling is incredibly common, and it often comes from measuring the wrong thing. Savings matter, but hidden expenses can quietly overpower even a solid plan. So let's talk about 5 retirement expenses that catch good planners off guard. Not the obvious ones, not the ones everyone talks about at the surface. I mean the ones that creep in, nudge your budget, and slowly change how safe you feel. And once you see them clearly, you can plan for them without panic. The first one is healthcare, but not in the way most people think. People hear Medicare and feel relieved, like the gate has opened and the storm is over. But Medicare is more like a raincoat than a roof. It helps a lot, but you can still get soaked around the edges. That's where good planners get surprised. Part B premiums, drug coverage, a supplement plan, deductibles, dental, vision, hearing aids, maybe physical therapy, maybe a specialist you didn't expect, maybe one prescription that quietly changes your whole monthly budget. Michael understands this better now than he did at 64. He thought once he reached Medicare age, medical costs would shrink. Instead, they changed shape. Less catastrophic fear, maybe, but more steady monthly leaks. David had the same surprise, but his reaction was different. Because he has no pension, those extra health costs feel like direct pressure on his investments. Every new premium feels like another hand reaching into the account. And that feeling changes how freely he lives. Now listen, this is why income matters more than people realize. If your medical costs rise and you have strong guaranteed income, you adjust. If they rise and you depend mostly on withdrawals, every increase feels louder. Think of your retirement like a kitchen table with 4 sturdy legs. If one leg gets shorter, the table still stands if the others are strong. But if the whole table depends on one shaky leg, every little wobble feels dramatic. That's what happens when too much of your life depends on your savings alone. Let me ask you something. Do you know what your monthly income will actually look like when you retire? Be honest with yourself. Not what your accounts are worth, not what you hope spending will be. What will actually land in your checking account every month? The second expense is housing, and this one fools almost everybody. People say, my house is paid off, so my housing cost is low. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes that is one of the biggest half-truths in retirement. A paid-off house is not a free house. It's more like owning an older boat that's tied safely at the dock. You may not owe money on it, but it still needs paint, patching, fuel, and attention. And some years it asks for all of that at once. Property taxes don't disappear. Home insurance doesn't disappear. Repairs absolutely do not disappear. And as homes age, they start talking to you in expensive little whispers. A water heater here, a roof there, a tree removal you didn't see coming, a cracked driveway, rising utility bills, or a furnace that decides retirement is the perfect time to quit. Michael knows this dance. Last year, he had to replace his HVAC system and part of his plumbing line. That was thousands of dollars in one season. Not because he planned badly, but because houses age, whether you budget emotionally or not. David thought he escaped this by moving to a condo. Smaller space, less maintenance, simpler life. But then came HOA increases, building assessments, parking fees, and insurance changes. He downsized square footage, but he did not downsize surprise. That's one of the biggest retirement myths. The myth that smaller automatically means cheaper. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it just rearranges the bill and makes it harder to spot. Inflation is like an ice cube in the sun. It doesn't melt all at once. It creeps, it nudges, it slowly raises the cost of everything around you. Your insurance, your labor costs, your materials, your groceries, your utilities. And that matters because housing costs are rarely still. They rise quietly while people keep using old numbers in their head. That is the difference between perceived data and real data. Perceived data says, I paid off the house. Real data says, what does it cost me now? Let me ask you, have you ever calculated what your pension is actually worth in real dollars? Most people never do. And when they ignore that value, they often over-focus on the house and under-focus on income. That can twist the whole plan. Because Michael's pension, small as it is, absorbs some of that housing stress. It acts like a monthly buffer. David has no such buffer, so every condo increase pushes him toward larger withdrawals. And that creates another problem people miss. The third expense that catches good planners off guard is taxes. Not working life taxes, retirement taxes. And retirement taxes can feel sneaky because they don't always hit all at once. They show up in layers. Think of taxes like weeds in a garden. If you only look once in a while, the yard seems mostly fine. Then one morning you look closely and realize they've spread everywhere. That's how taxes quietly build in retirement. Your Social Security may become partly taxable. Your IRA withdrawals may stack on top of that. A pension adds another layer. Then required withdrawals later in life can push you even higher than you expected. And if that weren't enough, higher income can also raise your Medicare premiums. That surprise catches a lot of smart people off guard. You take out more money for one reason, and the system quietly reaches back and charges you more somewhere else. That kind of planning mistake doesn't feel like math. It feels like a trap. David ran into this after a strong market year and a larger withdrawal. He sold some investments, filled part of a tax bracket without meaning to, and then got hit with higher costs the next year. Nothing illegal, nothing reckless, just a plan with blind spots. Michael's situation is simpler. His pension is predictable. His Social Security is predictable. He still has to think about taxes, yes, but fewer moving parts means fewer surprises. Again, not flashy, but steadier. This is where the million-dollar myth starts falling apart. People think a bigger account automatically means a stronger retirement. But a bigger account with poor withdrawal planning can create more stress than a smaller one with better income design. That's the part almost nobody tells you clearly enough. Quick question. Have you ever felt guilty about spending money in retirement? A lot of people do. And sometimes that guilt has less to do with the spending itself, and more to do with not trusting what the future will cost. The fourth expense is family. Not because family is a burden, because love is expensive, and retirement often arrives just when several generations need help at the same time. That pressure can quietly reshape your budget. Think of it like leaving your pantry door open. You don't notice the missing food right away. A little here, a little there, and then suddenly the shelves look different. That's how family support spending often works. It might be helping an adult child with rent, paying for a grandchild's birthday trip, covering a car repair for someone you love, flying out to help after a surgery or a rough season. And sometimes it's even more personal than that. A parent in assisted living, a sibling going through a crisis, a daughter between jobs who says it's only temporary and means it. Now listen, most people do not plan for this honestly. Not because they're foolish, but because love doesn't fit neatly into a spreadsheet. You tell yourself you'll help once, and then life keeps asking. Michael has a daughter who needed help after a divorce. He stepped in more than once. He doesn't regret it. But he also admits it changed his retirement math more than any market drop ever did. David has a different version of the same thing. He pays for flights, hotels, and last-minute visits to see his aging mother. Individually, the costs don't look enormous. Together over a year, they become their own category. This is one of those places where good planners underestimate expenses. Not because they forgot the electric bill, because they forgot they are human. And humans spend money on the people they care about. That doesn't mean you stop helping. It means you build room for reality. You create a giving number, not just a giving impulse. And that single choice can protect your peace more than you expect. Here's something most people never consider. Do you know the difference between what you need and what you want in retirement? That question can save you. Because when you confuse the two, every emotional expense starts dressing up like a necessary one. And then your plan quietly gets weaker. The fifth expense is care. Not always a nursing home. not always something dramatic. Sometimes it starts with a few hours of help each week. A ride here, a hand there, a service you never needed before. Think of aging like a staircase in dim light. You don't fall down the whole thing at once. You just notice one step feels different, then another, then another. That's how support costs often enter retirement. It may be help after a surgery, meal delivery for a few months, a home aid for bathing or dressing, a safer bathroom, a chairlift, wider doorways, better lighting, new flooring. None of these costs feel outrageous by themselves. That's what makes them dangerous. They show up one at a time, quietly, almost politely, until your budget realizes it has been living with a whole new person in it. And if you're married, this gets even more important, because one spouse often becomes the first caregiver. That means emotional strain, physical strain, and sometimes lost income if one person is still working part-time. Then if care expands, the money side changes again. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? Most people avoid that conversation, but the cost of avoiding it is usually much higher than the discomfort of having it. Silence is expensive in retirement. Survivor planning is not just about grief, it's about cash flow. One Social Security check often disappears, while many household costs stay stubbornly in place. That catches widows and widowers off guard all the time. If the larger benefit is the one you delayed, that surviving spouse has a stronger floor. If both people claimed early because it felt easier in the moment, the survivor may be left with a smaller check right when life feels most unstable. That is not a small decision. Think of your benefit like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe, one you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every tax contribution, it all builds pressure in that pipe. The age you turn it on changes the size of the stream. Michael waited until 70. That gave him a larger monthly check for life, and it will matter if his wife outlives him. David turned his on at 62 because he wanted the money sooner. Now he admits the monthly amount feels smaller than he imagined. And if you wait too long to turn it on, some of that water never reaches you. It just stays in the pipe, unused, gone. No refunds, no second chances. That's why the question isn't, what's the best age? It's what's the best decision for your life right now. That one sentence can keep you from thinking too simply about 62, 67, or 70. For some people, 62 makes sense. For others, full retirement age does. For others, waiting until 70 is powerful because it raises the guaranteed income floor. The right answer depends on health, work, spouse benefits, savings, and peace of mind. But what people often miss is this. Unexpected retirement expenses make a strong Social Security check more valuable, not less. Because when health costs rise, housing costs rise, or care costs rise, steady income acts like shock absorbers under the whole plan. That's also where COLA matters. Cost of living adjustments are not perfect, but they help. They mean that part of your income has at least some chance of rising with inflation. Your old estimate from 5 years ago may not tell the full story anymore. A lot of savings-focused advice skips over that. It treats all money like it behaves the same way. It doesn't. $1 in an investment account and $1 of guaranteed monthly income do very different jobs. I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever avoided opening your retirement statements because you were afraid of what you'd see? That feeling is more common than people admit. And one reason it happens is because too many plans are built around balances, not around how life actually feels month to month. Here's where sequence of returns risk enters the room. That sounds technical, but it really means this. If the market drops early in retirement and you have to keep pulling money out, those withdrawals can hurt more than they would later. Now connect that to the 5 hidden expenses we just talked about. Healthcare rises. Housing surprises you. Taxes show up. Family needs help. Care costs creep in. And suddenly you're pulling more from investments at the worst possible time. That's why hidden expenses are not small side issues. They don't just cost money. They can force bad timing. And bad timing in retirement can quietly erode a plan that once looked strong. David feels this deeply. He knows his numbers. He is not irresponsible. But because so much of his life depends on withdrawals, every surprise carries more emotional weight. His wealth looks big, but it feels unstable. Michael, with much less saved, does not feel rich, but he feels anchored. His pension, his larger Social Security benefit, and his lower fixed costs give him something David envies: calm. That is why the real question isn't how much have you saved. It's how exposed are you to the expenses that don't show up nicely in retirement articles. Once you ask the right question, the whole plan starts to look different. And usually more honest. So what should you do with all this? Start by building 2 spending numbers, not one. One is your normal monthly life. The other is your ambush number, the stuff that shows up quietly but predictably over time. That means setting aside room for medical leaks, home repairs, family help, tax surprises, and care needs. Not because they will all happen tomorrow, because enough of them will happen eventually that pretending otherwise only makes the plan weaker. Realistic is not negative. Realistic is protective. Second, map out your income floor. Social Security, pension, annuity if you have one, anything that shows up whether markets are kind or not. Then compare that floor to your basic monthly life. If your floor covers more than you thought, breathe. You may be stronger than you realized. If it covers less than you hoped, that's still useful. Clarity beats guessing every single time. Third, review your Social Security timing with fresh eyes. Not in isolation, in connection with your spouse, your health, your savings, and the hidden expenses you now know to expect. The right claiming age is part math, part life design. Fourth, do a retirement tax check before you need the money. Look at future withdrawals, future brackets, and how Medicare premiums might react. You do not need fancy jargon. You just need to know which dollars will quietly trigger other costs. Fifth, have the uncomfortable family conversation. Set boundaries. Set expectations. Talk about survivor income. Talk about care. Talk about what kind of help you can give without weakening your own future. That conversation may feel awkward for one evening and helpful for years. Here's the thing. You do not need to fear retirement because of these expenses. You just need to stop acting surprised by things that are common, human, and quietly built into real life. That shift alone can make you feel more in control. Because control in retirement does not come from pretending nothing will go wrong. It comes from knowing what tends to go wrong and building a life that can absorb it without breaking your confidence. That is what strong planning actually looks like. Your income needs to be greater than your expenses, but your confidence needs to be greater than your fear. Numbers matter, but how you feel about those numbers, that matters just as much. And that feeling, that confidence, it doesn't come from having more, it comes from understanding more. If this gave you a new perspective, if it made you think differently, even just a little, then subscribe. The more clarity you build now, the stronger your future becomes. And I'll see you in the next one.